They made one fatal miscalculation the day they decided to challenge me. What follows is the account of how a group of HOA officials turned my quiet existence into chaos, and how I converted that chaos into a source of profit. You heard that right. They erected a fence blocking the only road leading to my ranch. Apparently, they'd never learned the old saying, "Never provoke a Texas rancher." Today, I sit comfortably, counting the steady flow of cash from my homemade toll booth, while the HOA president scrambles to explain to his superiors why their budget mysteriously evaporated. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below if you've ever had a pleasant encounter with an HOA, though I doubt your story rivals mine. My name is Ethan Morgan, 38 years old. I work remotely in business consulting, but my lifelong passion has always been electronics and do-it-yourself innovation. 2 years ago, I purchased a 30-acre ranch just outside Austin, Texas, to pursue my dream of a self-sustaining life. The property was far from perfect when I found it. Fields swallowed by weeds, a weathered farmhouse begging for restoration, and a barn that looked ready to collapse at the slightest gust. But where others saw ruin, I saw potential. The soil was rich, the water rights were secure, and the distance from the city provided the peace I craved while keeping supply runs practical. Since childhood, I've been captivated by technology, taking apart gadgets, improving them when I could, and occasionally starting small, learning experience, fires my parents didn't appreciate. Over the years, I taught myself programming and electronics, skills that became invaluable for automating the ranch. My first major project was a smart irrigation system that relied on soil moisture sensors and weather data to fine-tune watering cycles for my vegetable garden. It conserved water and rewarded me with an abundant first harvest. Then came the solar-powered chicken coop, its doors opening with sunrise and sealing at dusk to guard against predators. I even developed a motion monitoring system that alerted me whenever one of my goats was close to giving birth. The ranch became more than a home, it was my workshop, my sanctuary, and the physical embodiment of my ideas. I raised goats, chickens, and vegetables, sold fresh produce to local families, and even rented parts of the property for camping and small gatherings. The projector displayed sleek renderings of elegant homes, each with shimmering pools, manicured gardens, and ornate stone facades. Phase 1 will feature 12 executive residences starting at $1.2 million, Maxwell announced proudly. Residents will enjoy exclusive access to a private clubhouse and tennis courts, luxuries that will redefine Golden Meadows living. Appreciative murmurs rippled through the audience like wind through tall grass. Then his tone shifted. However, he said, pausing for effect, we face one challenge, the unsightly ranch that brings unwanted traffic through our community. My stomach tightened. He was talking about my property. The way he said ranch, as though describing a toxic landfill, made my blood boil. Maxwell clicked to the next slide, detailed images of an ornate stone gate and wrought iron fencing. This new security installation will beautify the entrance and control undesirable traffic, he explained, his eyes briefly meeting mine. The gate will feature stone columns, professional landscaping, and a state-of-the-art access system to enhance both safety and property values. Construction begins tomorrow and should conclude within 3 days. That was it. I couldn't stay seated any longer. My chair scraped loudly against the floor as I rose, every head turning toward me. Excuse me, I began, forcing calm into my voice. I'm Ethan Morgan, the owner of that unsightly ranch you're referring to. I hold a recorded easement granting me legal access through that road. You can't block a lawful right-of-way without notice or consent. The room fell silent. Maxwell's polished smile faltered for only a second before returning, colder this time. Mr. Morgan, he said smoothly, whatever informal arrangement existed before, the HOA maintains full authority over community roads and their security. And frankly, your farm is an eyesore. It's depressing property values. The board has already voted, unanimously, I might add, to proceed with the gate. He gestured toward a row of nodding board members. Still, we're not unreasonable, he continued. You'll be able to purchase an access card, for a modest annual fee of $300. That's a small price for the added value and protection we're providing. My jaw clenched. This isn't an arrangement, I shot back. It's a legally recorded easement filed with the county, a permanent right you can't simply vote away. My ranch has stood there for decades, long before these homes existed. The previous owner never had an issue, And neither did I until now. Maxwell's smirk didn't waver, but his tone grew colder. Times change, Mr. Morgan. The decision stands. Construction begins tomorrow. I'd advise you to apply for your access card quickly, unless you'd prefer to be inconvenienced. And with that, he turned back to his agenda, as though I'd never spoken. When the meeting ended, I lingered in the parking lot, seething. The storm had passed, but rain still dripped from the trees, matching my mood. That's when George Miller, a soft-spoken man in his 60s, approached me. I recognized him from community events, always polite, always cautious. He glanced around nervously before speaking. Bennett promised investors he'd raise property values by clearing out what he calls undesirable elements, George whispered. He needs your land for full expansion. This gate is step one. He's done this before. First come the restrictions, then code violations, then water access issues. He'll make life unbearable until you sell. I thanked him quietly, a chill creeping through me. Later, when I asked Maxwell for the easement documentation, he claimed it was under review. Our legal team is verifying the validity of older easements in light of new security requirements, he said dismissively. I'm sure we'll resolve it soon. The message was clear. He was buying time. Driving home that night, my headlights cut through sheets of mist. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being cornered by men with deeper pockets and stronger connections than I'd ever had. At home, I called Olivia Nguyen, an old college friend and a skilled real estate attorney. Despite the late hour, she answered on the third ring. I paced the kitchen as I explained everything, occasionally glancing out the window like I expected to see bulldozers already rolling up the road. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. Ethan, HOAs can be vicious, but they can't just ignore a recorded easement. That's illegal. Tomorrow, go to the county registry and get a certified copy of it. If it's properly documented, you have a strong case, but this fight could take months and a lot of money. Her words weren't exactly reassuring, but they gave me a plan. What about the construction tomorrow? I asked. Can we stop it? Emergency injunctions take time, she said. Maybe days, maybe weeks. In the meantime, document everything. Photos, videos, every conversation. If they actually trap you on your land, call the sheriff. That could be considered unlawful imprisonment. We discussed strategy for another half hour before hanging up. It was past midnight when I finally stepped outside, flashlight in hand. Along the roadside, bright orange survey flags fluttered in the wind, marking the path of the future gate and fence. They'd been planning this long before the meeting. I barely slept that night, convincing myself I had a few days to act. But just after dawn, the harsh beep 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 of heavy machinery tore through my morning. Pulling on my boots, I ran down the driveway. From my porch, I watched in disbelief as a construction crew installed an 8-foot metal fence and began wiring up an electronic gate across my only road. The new gate stood directly across my access road. The fence stretched outward in both directions from the gate, severing my connection to the main thoroughfare. A yellow excavator bored holes for posts while workers set concrete for the foundations. I stormed across the site demanding to speak with the foreman, but the crew shrugged and repeated the same line. They were only following orders. We're paid to finish the job, sir, a hard-hat worker mumbled without meeting my gaze. Take it up with HOA management. Within the hour, Maxwell arrived flanked by Patricia, both immaculate despite the dust and early hour. Maxwell waved what he claimed was a permit, careful not to let me inspect it closely, and announced, with thin satisfaction, "This is HOA property now, Mr. Morgan. You'll need to register for an access card. $3,000 a year." Patricia added, curt and efficient, that permanent approval normally required 5 to 7 business days, though she offered a temporary card as a courtesy. Maxwell's faux generosity was infuriating. I felt the heat rise in my chest. "This is illegal," I told him. "My easement is recorded. You cannot block my only access." Maxwell's smile remained. His eyes did not. "I suggest you not interfere with an authorized construction project," he intoned. "We have permits. I'd hate to call the police if things get disruptive." He laid a hand on Patricia's shoulder. "Miss Lawson, issue Mr. Morgan his temporary card. I have other engagements." Patricia handed me a thin plastic card as if it were a punitive token. 7 days, she said flatly. The annual fee must be paid in full for a permanent card. No installments. Her tone carried the expectation that I'd make a scene. With nothing immediate to do, I retreated to my truck clutching the temporary card. Sliding the plastic to exit, I felt humiliated, compelled to swipe my way out of my own property. I drove straight to the county records office, a 30-minute trip to the courthouse downtown. An elderly registrar, spectacles dangling from a chain, retrieved and reviewed my file. "This is a straightforward perpetual access easement," she observed, raising an eyebrow. "Recorded in 1972. Odd someone would contest it." I gripped the certified copy like a lifeline, vindication, but far from victory. Next stop, Olivia's office. Her firm occupied a modest downtown suite. She welcomed me immediately, already surrounded by open legal texts and multiple browser tabs of research. After reading the documents, she spoke plainly, "They can't lawfully block your access. This easement runs with the land, meaning it survives changes in ownership." She warned, however, that the courts move slowly and that Maxwell's tactics were deliberate. "They're buying time," she said. "An emergency injunction might take weeks. In the meantime, photograph everything. Record conversations if permissible. If they ever fully deny your access, summon the sheriff and cite the easement." I left her office with a plan and the uneasy sense that I'd been set several moves behind in a game I hadn't realized I was playing. Returning to the ranch that afternoon, I found the gate finished, an imposing metal barrier wired with cameras and intercoms, flanked by fencing that disappeared into the distance. Maxwell stood beside it, offering me the temporary 7-day card with a patronizing air. "Pay the fee," he said, "or find another way home." Then, leaning closer, he added, "File for an injunction if you like. By the time the courts act, our deal will be done." As his smugness washed over me, an idea sparked, small and dangerous. If they wanted to monetize access, why couldn't I? I kept that thought to myself, accepted the card, and drove through. Once inside, I walked the property line to examine where the new fence intersected with my land. Something was off, a subtle deviation in the fence's curve that didn't match the boundaries I remembered. I pulled my survey from the purchase file and spent an hour comparing landmarks and measurements. A nagging suspicion formed. The HOA's gate might actually encroach upon my property. For days I immersed myself in Texas property law and easement doctrine, living at my kitchen table amid land surveys and statute printouts. Then I noticed it, an apparent surveying error. Roughly 3 feet of the electronic gate mechanism and 1 fence post lay within my boundary. A minor discrepancy on paper, but legally enormous in consequence. Olivia concurred. If their structure sat on my land, it amounted to an unauthorized encroachment. "They've effectively erected an unauthorized structure on your property," she said, the satisfaction in her voice barely concealed. "That gives you a set of rights they can't easily trample." She recommended an official survey to confirm the finding before acting. If proven, it would be leverage, power to force negotiations rather than beg for mercy. I called Ryan Cooper, a contractor friend who'd helped renovate my barn. Practical and blunt, Ryan walked the line with me, examined the maps, and didn't sugarcoat his verdict. "They built part of that gate on your land," he said, chewing a toothpick. "They figured you wouldn't notice." Together we sketched a plan, erect a legitimate structure, my own toll booth, on the strip of land that was indisputably mine. With my electronics background and Ryan's carpentry skills, we could build an automated booth quickly. "Move fast," Ryan advised. "Once they understand what you're doing, they'll try to stop it." We had to act on certainty and speed, 2 things Maxwell hadn't planned for. Ryan warned me they'd try to stop us. "Better to ask forgiveness than permission," he said with a smirk. We spent the entire weekend preparing, knowing time was against us and that the HOA office would be closed. Between hardware stores, electronic suppliers, and lumberyards, we gathered every last piece of material we'd need. "Maxwell thinks he's won," I told Ryan as we finalized the blueprints. "But by Sunday morning, he'll learn never to underestimate a rancher with a grudge and a toolkit." That evening, under the harsh glow of floodlights, our small crew got to work. Ryan brought 2 of his most reliable men, and I called in a favor from an electrician friend. The sound of drills and saws echoed through the night, drawing a few curious stares from passing cars. Luckily, neither Maxwell nor Patricia showed up. They must have thought their victory was already secure. By sunrise, we'd built a professional-looking toll booth directly beside the HOA's gate, completely on my property. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, a covered operator's area. Automated barrier, cameras, and a payment terminal I'd programmed myself. Clear signage read, "Private Access Road, $20 per crossing or $100 monthly pass." A local print shop rushed the order for me as a favor. The owner had his own HOA war stories and was more than happy to help. By dawn, the booth was fully functional, complete with mobile payments, receipts, solar panels, and a battery backup system so no one could shut it down by cutting the power. When Golden Meadows residents returned from their weekend trips, they were greeted by my new toll gate. Confusion turned to disbelief as cars lined up. I stood at the booth in a crisp shirt and cap, calmly explaining to each driver, "This section of the road crosses my property. Since the HOA decided to charge for theirs, I'm doing the same. $20 per crossing, or $100 for the month. Cash, card, or mobile pay." Some were furious, others laughed, but most paid and moved on. A few threatened to call the police, but I simply pointed to the posted property survey. "Please do," I told them. "I've already spoken to law enforcement. Everything's legal." By mid-afternoon, the news had spread through the neighborhood. People stopped to take photos and videos. I knew it wouldn't be long before Maxwell heard. Sure enough, around 4 p.m., Patricia returned from shopping and stopped dead at the sight of the booth. "What is this?" she demanded, her face twisting in outrage. "This is illegal. I'm calling Maxwell." She refused to pay, parking her car off to the side while furiously dialing her phone. 30 minutes later, Maxwell arrived, red-faced, furious, and kicking up dust with his designer shoes. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted. "This is harassment. You can't block a public road." I kept my voice calm, which only made him angrier. "This isn't a public road, Mr. Bennett. You made that clear when you installed your gate. According to this survey, this stretch runs across my property. I'm exercising the same rights you claimed for the HOA." He threatened to call the police. I told him to go right ahead and even handed him a copy of my certified survey. "I've already spoken with my attorney," I added. "You're welcome to get your own." He called the police anyway. Officer Ramirez showed up within 20 minutes, a level-headed cop I'd met before. After listening to both sides and reviewing the documents, Ramirez turned to Maxwell. "Sir, this is a civil issue, not criminal. According to these surveys, this portion of the road is on Mr. Morgan's land. If you disagree, take it up in civil court." Maxwell sputtered in protest, demanding the officer do something. Ramirez just shrugged. "Unless you can prove it's your property, my hands are tied." Then he left. Maxwell stood there, humiliated. But I knew he wouldn't give up easily. This was just the opening move. By Monday morning, Maxwell had called an emergency HOA meeting, painting me as a dangerous nuisance who threatened community safety. The HOA hired a high-priced attorney, William Davis, known for real estate battles. Within days, I received a letter on firm letterhead demanding I shut down immediately, citing a dozen supposed violations, from easement misuse to public nuisance claims. I sent it straight to Olivia. She read it and chuckled. "Mostly bluff," she said. "They're trying to scare you." So, I didn't back down. The toll booth stayed open, and to my surprise, it became profitable. Within days, it brought in thousands of dollars. Residents were growing frustrated, not with me, but with Maxwell. They were tired of paying twice just to reach their own driveways. Desperate, the HOA tried everything. They cut power to the area. My solar system kept it running. They sent inspectors. Ryan's work passed every code. Then they claimed it was a business requiring permits, but Olivia swiftly dismantled that argument, too. News of the toll booth spread through Golden Meadows like dry tinder. Conversations at the coffee shop, at school pickup, and in church pews buzzed with the story. Nancy Fletcher, a long-time, influential resident, began openly challenging Maxwell at HOA meetings. "Why are we spending on legal fees when we could simply remove the gate?" she demanded during one heated session. Do we really want people asking whether they need cash to visit a neighbor? Other residents echoed her frustration as they continued paying twice to enter their own neighborhood. The local press followed. Zoe Sullivan from the Austin Chronicle called. I invited her to the ranch, showed my paperwork, and explained my position. I didn't start this, I told her. I only want the access I'm legally owed. If they're going to monetize a road that crosses my land, I'm entitled to do the same. Her article ran the following Sunday and ignited nationwide outrage. HOA horror stories multiplied online, TV crews picked up the thread, and my toll booth became a roadside spectacle for selfie seekers. Rather than back down, Maxwell escalated. One Tuesday at 2 a.m., my security footage captured him and two accomplices vandalizing the booth, damaging the payment terminal, spray painting cameras, and wrenching at the barrier arm. One figure resembled William Davis, the HOA's attorney. The other remained unidentified. I called the police immediately and provided the footage. Unaware I'd installed hidden backup cameras, Maxwell hadn't counted on the clear, time-stamped recording that showed his face. He later denied involvement to officers, absurdly claiming the incident was staged. But my cloud backups, copies with Olivia, and witnesses left little room for doubt. Ryan and I rebuilt the booth within a day, stronger than before, steel reinforcements, additional sensors, and alarms. I added a new, conspicuous sign, a special fee for Maxwell Bennett, $1,000 per crossing, and I released the vandalism video online. The clip spread fast through neighborhood forums, humiliating the HOA leadership. At the next emergency meeting, residents openly scolded Maxwell for his reckless conduct and the legal exposure he'd created. "You've put us all at risk of a lawsuit," one person shouted. Frank later described the room's anger. "What were you thinking, vandalizing private property on camera?" Digging deeper, I unearthed Maxwell's motive. Public records and industry contacts linked him to Platinum Ridge Developments, the developer behind the planned Golden Meadows estates. He wasn't merely shepherding a project for the community. He was profiting personally from clearing the ranch. Worse, he had concealed my easement from the board and framed the gate as a benign security upgrade. Olivia found proof that the original permit application was falsified. The filed location differed from where the gate was actually erected, conveniently omitting any mention of recorded easements. I also obtained a leaked HOA email in which Maxwell wrote that once I struggled to reach my land, I'd be forced to sell at our price, because the temporary inconvenience would be offset by a projected 30% rise in property values. Armed with permits, records, video, and the leaked correspondence, I had Maxwell cornered, but I opted for one more attempt at a peaceful resolution. I invited him to a mediated discussion at Olivia's office. To my surprise he accepted, perhaps confident he could intimidate me in a formal setting. The meeting was set for Wednesday afternoon. I arrived early with Olivia and the recording gear ready. Maxwell arrived late, a deliberate show of dominance, accompanied by William Davis, both impeccably dressed, the kind of suits that screamed money. I laid out a simple proposal. I would dismantle the toll booth and withdraw the criminal complaint if the HOA removed their gate and executed a written guarantee of my permanent easement rights. "This restores the status quo," I explained. "No toll. No gate. No more legal fees. We all move on." Maxwell and Davis exchanged looks. Maxwell leaned forward, his smile oily with condescension. "Mr. Morgan," he said, "you don't understand your situation. The HOA has far greater resources than you. We can drag this through the courts for years. You'll be bankrupt from legal fees long before we stop." He went on, boasting of how he'd manipulated the board, how most members don't read the documents and simply vote as instructed. "The development will happen with or without you," he declared. "You can sell now at a fair price, or be left with nothing." Maxwell didn't realize our confrontation was being lawfully recorded, with Olivia present as a witness. Under Texas law, recording is permitted when at least one party consents, and we'd taken the extra step of placing a clear notice in the meeting room stating that recordings might occur. It was a small detail, one Maxwell and Davis had completely missed in their arrogance. By the following morning, I had released everything: the video of the vandalism, the leaked emails, documentation proving Maxwell's conflict of interest, and the full recording of our meeting. I posted it across social media, emailed it to every HOA member, and forwarded the entire package to Zoe Sullivan at the Chronicle. The fallout was swift and seismic. Zoe's investigative article laid out every incriminating detail, exposing Maxwell's financial ties to the development company and his deliberate efforts to withhold information from residents. Larger media outlets quickly picked up the story, turning local scandal into statewide disgrace. Within days, the HOA board convened an emergency session. The atmosphere was chaotic, voices raised, residents demanding accountability. Several members called outright for Maxwell's dismissal. He tried to defend himself, claiming the evidence was fabricated and the recordings altered, but the crowd wasn't buying it. Patricia sat silently beside him, her expression revealing she was already calculating her exit strategy. A week later, the board voted to terminate Maxwell. He now faced a civil lawsuit from me and potential criminal charges for vandalism. William Davis quietly stepped down as HOA counsel, likely realizing that being caught on tape while potentially aiding a crime was career suicide. Nancy Fletcher was appointed interim president, and under her leadership the new board acted decisively. They voted unanimously to remove the gate, formally recognized my permanent easement rights through a legally binding document, and agreed to reimburse me for the damage to the toll booth as well as my legal fees. Meanwhile, Platinum Ridge Developments abandoned the Golden Meadows Estates project, unwilling to endure the mounting negative publicity. The land earmarked for construction was eventually purchased by a conservation trust and preserved as protected open space, allowing the community to retain its semi-rural charm. Maxwell made one final, desperate move, filing a defamation suit against me. The court swiftly dismissed it after ruling that every piece of evidence I'd shared was accurate and verifiable. He later accepted a plea deal for the vandalism charges, which included community service and restitution payments. I chose to put the $15,000 collected from the toll booth to good use, creating a land rights defense fund to support others facing similar HOA harassment. The irony wasn't lost on me. Maxwell's attempt to extort me had ended up financing a resource to help others fight back. To mark the resolution, I hosted a massive barbecue at the ranch, inviting all Golden Meadows residents, except Maxwell, and even a few members of the local press. The gathering turned into a celebration of unity, relief, and shared victory. During the event, I announced plans to convert my ranch into a community agricultural education center, fostering cooperation instead of conflict. This land was always meant to bring people together, I told the crowd. Let's turn it into a place where everyone can learn and grow side by side. Frank and Eleanor Hamilton were among the first to volunteer. Frank offered to teach kids the basics of electronics, simple circuits and solar gadgets, while Eleanor organized gardening workshops. Soon, other neighbors joined in, bringing their own expertise. What had once been a bitter feud was transforming into a thriving partnership. A year later, the ranch had evolved into a community hub. We hosted gardening classes, farmers markets, DIY automation workshops, and weekend gatherings. Local schools brought students for field trips, and the university's agricultural extension office collaborated with us on research projects. Maxwell, shunned by nearly everyone, eventually sold his home and moved away. At the former toll booth site, I placed a modest sign that read, "Never pick a fight with a rancher who knows how to build things, and has too much free time." The old gate was replaced with a welcoming entrance adorned with wildflowers and benches. The HOA introduced sweeping reforms, greater transparency, limited executive authority, and more community input. George Miller joined the board, advocating for balanced enforcement and fairness. My mechanical and engineering skills found new purpose as I helped neighbors install solar systems and automate irrigation. I even published an online guide to farm automation that gained national attention among small-scale farmers. Though the toll booth was gone, its parts lived on. The barrier arm became part of a playground structure, the solar panels powered educational displays, and the cameras now recorded wildlife for environmental studies. Zoe Sullivan's exposé earned her a journalism award and launched her career in community reporting. In the end, the experience reinforced one simple truth: communities are stronger than individuals driven by greed. Property values in Golden Meadows rose, not in spite of the failed development, but because of the thriving educational farm that replaced it. If you ever face your own, Maxwell Bennett, remember, document everything, know your rights, build alliances, and don't be afraid to think creatively. Innovation and persistence can dismantle even the most entrenched forms of petty power. Today, as neighbors stop by for eggs or workshops, it's hard to believe this place was once a battleground. The fence that divided us has become an open gate that welcomes. Sometimes, All it takes is one stubborn dreamer with a toolbox and a cause to remind people that principle still matters more than power.